Yeah, Tucker's signed a contract with Twitter, and this is the whole thing. This is his big doofy face. Hold on, let me see if this is fit right for the. It is. What? Look how I framed it. Look at just. Why did I put the other monitor in the right spot and all that? Not. Look at that. So this is. Let's see. Where's the startup button? We may have a congratulations, Tucker Carlton. You, sir, may indeed be the runner-up of the Derp Face Award, currently a title held by Devin Nunes, but we have hope for you. I don't know what lens they were using at Fox that made me not notice that one of your eyes is lower than the other. It's true of everyone. We all look funky, especially you ever have somebody you really care about walk up behind you in a mirror and then you realize that you've been compensating in your head all this time for one of their eyes. You've been, because you like them so much, you're almost raising the eye to match up, and then you see them in reflection and it overcompensates and you're like, Jesus Christ. Like that. It happens. And I noticed that I was worried that once he went to Twitter, he would hold back and we wouldn't get both forehead butt cracks. But indeed, he's going all the way. He's not holding it back, ladies and gentlemen. Twitter's getting double butt cracks all he wants. And he's in his man cave because manliness is all a part of his mission in the world. He's got his tussle and he's got his little, Yasser Arafat picnic shirt on. And he's got he's got a uniformity of double butt crack. His philtrum is double lined up with he's even got a double, like a lower lip double butt crack. Is that a thing? Is he CGI? Elon Musk, are you tricking us? Did you sign the first, we'll create a digital avatar of you. You don't even have to do the show. Well, it'll listen to all your old shows. We'll put in some topic and it'll say whatever bullshit you would have said. Believe me, there will be shows like that, and this may be one of them. Let's find out.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning,
hey,
it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in
it doesn't look like that?
Southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight, puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down.
Not quite. If they run out of water, which they're not going to do. If anything, there's maybe a slightly more danger that they won't be able to route other water to it. Again, no.
So if this was intentional, it was
intentional. It was intentional. The Russians did it on purpose.
It's not a military tactic. It was an act of terrorism.
Right. Well, I don't think it was an act of terrorism. I think it was actually an attack on infrastructure because they don't have the soldiers to push back against an impending attack by the Ukrainians. So they figured flood the lands. That's it's an old military tactic, and these motherfuckers haven't come up with anything new. So that makes sense.
The question is, who did it?
The Russians. You're welcome. Good night.
Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by
effectively Russian. It was built by the Ukrainians when they were still a part of the Soviet Union.
The Russian government.
The Russian government. No. It was not. That's just flatly a lie. It was not built by the Russian government. It was built by the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republics, which do not exist anymore. It was built by a government that doesn't actually have a capital anymore, doesn't actually run shit. The Russian government as it stands is not the government that built that. It's like saying the Egyptian government built the pyramids, but on a slightly smaller scale, but only just barely.
Currently sits in Russian-controlled territory.
It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. Seized territory. Controlled,
The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet.
Okay. First of all, no. It was home to a bunch of variants of the Russian fleet pre-Soviet, the USSR. Then after the USSR, then it was like leasing ground from Ukraine, which was its own independent state. It has been an independent state for, again, this sounds like shit that King George would have had someone read off of, hear ye, and here it is said that Jamestown has been land of the king hereabout since the 1400s, and thereby is still ours, whatever.
Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more.
No. I mean, not any more than their shitty battle plans and their absolute inability to function as a government.
And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it.
Have they? Did they call you first? They've considered destroying it? All right.
In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike.
Mm-hmm.
So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge mystery. Mm-hmm.
Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian
No, I wouldn't. As a matter of fact, I'm certain they did.
natural gas pipeline.
Also, by the way, that's movement in an odd direction, considering his belief was we did it, that the U.S. did it, that America blew up the pipeline that was already shut down and Germany wasn't going to use and was full of gas. That the only way the Russians could get it out was to vent it in international waters.
Last fall, and in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we
No, they didn't.
now know.
No, we do not.
It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself.
How is that himself? Again, blowing a hole in a hose that your only option to get the pressure out of it, an explosive gas, to get that pressure out is to roll it back your way through a factory that's a processing plant that is effectively empty of people who know how to run shit because you've sent them off to die for a chunk of land that you could just lease if you just wanted to behave like a sane human being. But yeah, again, he put a hole in it to vent the gas out, and then they filled it back up. They patched it, filled it with air. And?
Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir...
By the way, I think that's a shot at the fact that he used to be on cable, and when he was there, he would lie to you while he was there, and so now you know the truth because you're watching it on Twitter.
Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you.
Shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. I'm just going to go out on a lim and say that tactic is not going to work. If Vladimir Putin shoots himself to death, I don't think it's going to annoy me at all. As a matter of fact, that is probably the opposite of the feeling that I would kind of have. I don't wish ill or death on anybody in particular, but I'm certainly not going to be invested in feeling bad about somebody like that. So I just, you don't say. I think the only thing about the shooting himself to death is that why would it annoy me? Because I would rather him be maimed. Okay, make your point. Why couldn't you shoot yourself to maim yourself so that you can't walk or you need a colostomy bag and then I could enjoy it for decades? What's wrong with you?
We know this from the American media.
Do we? Of which you are not a part?
Which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure.
Well, that's probably because largely satellite imagery and the people involved. And again, it very well may be Russians who are trying to attack Russian infrastructure. We saw that in Moscow. We saw that in Belgorod. Well, we did. You didn't. Somebody hands you an opinion that you're supposed to state, and you go, yes, this is what I would say, and then you repeat it.
Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal, and even...
By the way, if you're going to try and, aggravate my side of the aisle by calling out people that... calling up people that I was against and that were, in line with the Bush administration... I mean, it's like the Epstein client list. I give a fuck. If you're on it, Even if I did like you, fuck you, but especially if I didn't.
Even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises.
Clearly coordinated.
Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things.
Well, no, he didn't just blow up the dam to be evil. The idea was he doesn't have the troops or the wherewithal to actually attack that area, or to, and the land is drying. And so by flooding it, you limit areas where the Ukrainians could get through. Effectively, if you're worried about a giant tank and infantry onslaught where they bomb their way, ahead of an infantry push, then flooding an area, especially where soft ground is one of your friends in this, and it's drying out faster, and it wasn't as bad a winter and all that kind of stuff. You don't have that as much of it. So blowing up the dam floods an area so that you can't cross it with standard gear for a little while longer. It won't last very long, and you won't be able to, engage in any fighting there, but you don't have enough people to do it anyways. So better to just have a moat, essentially, like a rough moat. That's how you do it. That's exactly why. It has nothing to do with being evil. I mean, it's like the evil part's like a plus. Like he's like, oh, it will also drown some people, but that's not why he did it. And anybody with like a strategic bone in their fucking body might actually be able to process that and go, oh, this guy doesn't have the troops. He doesn't have the tanks. He doesn't have the armored troop carriers. He's got limited resources. So flood an area, you don't have to deal with that part. Also, the fact that water was provided to the nuclear plant will make everybody scramble to go do something else, and the inner workings of the Ukrainian government will have to do rush to fix that in some other way, so you can make them use up resources. And then the other part is that if you're trying to clear Crimea, you don't want to blame the fact that you're losing the war, you can tell your people, sorry, you guys got to evacuate out of Crimea. There's not going to be any water because those motherfuckers blew up the dam. Or I could just say evil, and you could just assume that I don't know enough to think this through at all.
Purely for the dark joy of being evil.
Yeah, see, this is... Or the fucking 3 major reasons I just gave you that are strategically, politically, and militarily useful.
In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the...
No, he flooded Ukrainian land to protect himself.
most evil thing you can do, and therefore perfectly in character for a man that evil.
Okay, that's, again, I think this is supposed to be irony, but I can't tell because of his haircut.
That was their explanation.
No, that was not their explanation. I mean, obviously there's a huge the media apparently said, they all got together and in concert said, evil, so evil he punched himself in the dick, and people went, oh yeah, rubber stamp. That said, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that was not what they said.
No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been the Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that.
Well, no, they did it. If they did entertain it, they spitballed it in the editorial room or before the show, and then they looked at the facts on the ground and went, yeah, strategically, this doesn't make any fucking sense. The only reason they might do it, and the reason is a similar tactic to the version that I said, which is they're cutting off Russians from being able to pass into an area, and therefore they only have to fight with their limited resources in another area. That could be it, but again, probably because Zelensky's trying to punch himself in the dick because Tucker thinks he's evil, and that's what evil people do.
Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky.
I heard that. I have heard that. At a couple of places, mostly casual conversation over cheese.
And we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, arguably, well, let's see if he goes into the Moscow drone stuff.
Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. The guy who's in the middle of actually heading a country that's in war, that's actually been to the fucking front lines a bunch of times. I look at him and I go, this is a man who some rich second generation dickhead in his plywood man cave in Vermont is going to call sweaty and rat-like on Twitter at some point. The name of the show, by the way, is Tucker on Twitter. It should just be like Troll O'Clock. The Troller Carlson show.
Comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians.
A persecutor of Christians. Well, isn't that what all Jews do, Tucker? I mean, isn't that the gig? I guess so.
A friend of BlackRock.
A friend of BlackRock. Is it Mr. BlackRock, or is it you mean the company that has your pension as part of their funds? I'm not kidding.
But don't believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man.
Your own eyes should tell you that because he wears a green t-shirt, he's sweaty and rat-like and therefore evil. Don't believe your own eyes when you watch him actually going to the front lines and watch him actually working and presiding over a country that's in the middle of a war. He's not. He's living in an ivory tower somewhere in Florida, I believe, West Palm, someplace. It's a dumpy little, like, it's not quite a golf course, but it's got a little tower in it and stuff, and he just sits in the tower drinking his own urine and growing his finger. Not him. It's not Zelensky. Somebody, anyways, I remember. I saw somebody on the news like that. He was definitely sweaty. Rat-like, I don't know.
The best, really. As George W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit.
Jesus Christ. Our shifty... Yeah. So we're just going to throw in all the anti-Semitic dog whistles. We're just going to blow all of them like some sort of fucking performing seal. Just
is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam.
No, he's not. The reasoning lands more in the Russian side, and of course they have access to it, and it wasn't struck with a missile. Otherwise, the Russians, by the way, would have footage of that missile hitting it. Wouldn't they? It was blown up. So I guess maybe the question then is shove every other ounce of bullshit you've pushed aside and focus on the part where you said it was Russian-controlled territory. Because if he did blow it up, that meant he sent saboteurs in, and how much control do you have over an area where people could blow up an entire dam?
He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin.
Yeah, all right. This is like the hyperbolic perfection argument is the kind of shit you hear in a relationship argument right before you break up. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Perfect.
That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him.
Okay, that's a anti-gay jab at Lindsey Graham.
They're just two good people hanging out together and being good.
He's trying very hard to not have to actually say anything in a 10-minute segment. That's called that. By the way, Tucker on Twitter is his show, right? This is an episode. This episode is 10 whole minutes long. It's basically he's getting Elon Musk to pay a skeleton staff of people that left Fox when he left, or a couple of people that used to work there, to do his opening monologue from the Tucker Carlson show and pop it up on Twitter and call it an entire show.
And like all good people, when they meet in person, they spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Nice edit.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
The Russians are...
Also, by the way, Zelensky didn't laugh at that. They're not laughing together. And Lindsey Graham saying it's the best money we've ever spent, and pulling like an old John McCain, bomb, 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 Iran kind of stuff, trying to be tough in that situation. That's not on Zelensky at all. Zelensky's simply saying to a high-ranking senator, with some seniority in the Senate in the United States, who is very much for the continued funding of the Ukrainian military by the U.S. and by NATO. That he's playing nice with it. He's like, yeah, freedom. We have a choice. We can be free or we can die. And right now we are free. That's it. And this dickhead wants to take that clip and have you and tell you what you just saw. This is I don't know how to tell you this, Tucker, but you once you left Fox, you're on a bullet train to Bongholio land. This is what Bongholio does, and I thought you were better than that.
They're dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads across his thin, quivering lips as he forms the words.
You watched that pretty intently, did you?
Looks like a starving man contemplating a breakfast buffet. The aroma of death has aroused Lindsey Graham. Thanks so much, replies Zelensky. He feels the same way.
Does he? He feels the same way? The camera wasn't on him, so we didn't get to get his quivering lips, I guess, so.
There's nothing dark here. Just two middle-aged guys celebrating the killing of a population. They don't...
A population? No. Talk about Russian soldiers. They haven't blown up buildings inside Russia the way the Russians have inside Ukraine, you fuck. These are soldiers, invading soldiers. That's what they are talking about. And considering this dickhead was like championing the fucking Iraq war and making people like me, and more than likely if you're a regular my audience, people like you, the villain in the story of being when we were against the Iraq war, and now all of a sudden he's like found religion on it somehow, just in time to go, well, I was wrong about that war. I've learned a lot since then, so I'm not for us helping anybody in a meaningful way who actually deserves it.
Seem like the kind of people who'd enjoy flooding villages or starting a famine.
Starting a famine. Yes, because it was the Ukrainians that cut off grain in the Black Sea. And yeah.
In any case, who cares if they are? It's really not your business. Your job is to support.
Oh, and this is one of the things, like, he does this surrogate Illuminati conversation. He did this on his show all the time, and he thinks this is like a winning recipe, and it very well may be for parts of his audience. But his whole thing is he translates the elite Illuminati, big deep state conversation, big government deep state conversation that they have about you and what you're told you should do. And therefore, your responsibility in this little melodrama he cooks up when he yaps like this is that the only real out you have is to demand your independence and go, I'm not going to think of, they can't tell me how to think like that. I don't think like that at all. No, they can't make me, and turn you into a fucking 14-year-old going, you're not my real dad. That's the intellectual and kind of maturity level he's looking for.
Ukraine. Watch Nikki Haley, a Republican candidate for president, explain this principle on CNN.
Also, by the way, can I just say for the record, other than his attacks on Zelensky, which is not an American elected official, so far, all attacks on Republicans, Lindsey Graham, Nikki Haley, this is a revenge tour about the people he used to defend nightly.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the case. To say that we should stay neutral, it is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it.
See? It's very easy to understand. It is vitally important for you to support.
By the way, move his camera back. Move his camera back and then zoom in a little bit, because he's focusing on the lens and it's too close to his face. He's used to it being further away because he's used to being in a real studio instead of his fucking man cave, and it's making him cross-eyed. It's making him focus his vision is right here, and because that's where the reflection of the lens is, and so it makes him ever so, I mean, that's why that is. I'll tell you another trick. When people have a teleprompter on the screen and they look like they're looking just above your, like they're staring at your forehead, that's because they're late in the reading. Whoever's rolling the teleprompter is going too fast, so they're catching it up there. If you really want to like stare down the barrel, here's a little teleprompter lesson from your favorite Talk Soup host, or at least your third favorite in the top three. What you do is you want to catch the words just below the center of the lens so that as you're reading them, your eyes only drift slightly up to a certain point. And so you stay in this kind of window as the words roll by. If you get above that, you're going to chase it up like this, and then everybody looks like you're just kind of wondering about things. It's a habit. Anyways, his lens is closer than he's used to, and so it now you can't not see it, can you? And I do mean not see it.
Support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you.
Also, by the way, this is Nikki Haley is supposed to be the condescending voice of the Illuminati, elite, deep state, establishment, rhino, whatever, that's telling you how to think. Instead of this asshole making shit up and telling you how to think. I'm not doing it. They're doing that. This is what, like, I mean, two can play at that game. This is what he wants you to think. What Tucker is saying is you can't think this through on yourself. If you're able to hear what Nikki Haley says and you even consider that, you're evil. Right? See? It's just so stupid.
Your support is mandatory. And
you got to do this. And I'm not going to. And neither should you. And I'm like, this is so toddlerific. And again, God damn it. He's staring. The lens is too close. It just makes you bring your eyes a little closer together, and it's just very strange.
Until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up.
Thanks.
Up and support Ukraine, or else.
Yes, shut up and support Ukraine. That's what the establishment is telling you to do, but you don't have to do that. Yeah, fight back, America. Think for yourself. You're not going to be programmed by some dickhead sitting in a man cave plank laden. I like wood standard X show set that he had his former network build for him so he could work from home because even though he was vaccinated, he wanted to pretend like he wasn't coming into the building again. No, you don't have to believe that.
Else you're in trouble. Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies.
Well, what are you doing then? Ironic tautology? Artificial tautology?
Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes.
Right. The idea that there's a deep state that controls everything and that there's a unifying push by everyone instead of reality. The Occam's razor that maybe the earth is flat and everybody's coordinated to tell you the earth is flat. Or maybe it's round and nobody has to coordinate or check anything because their experience of it and everyone's experience of it has proved that case for a long time. So nobody has to how are you describing the round earth, the flat earth as round this week? Because nobody has to do that because reality backs them up. That would be Occam's razor. This is what he wants to do is make the case. And this is the essence of the case that you're seeing is that there's a puppet master behind this. And so the thought form is that there has to be this can't be true. None of it can be true on the merits. There are no people who are doing their best intermingling with people that are doing their worst, and the world is a complicated place where there's a lot going on, but the general formations of things can be agreed upon because we all see them for what they are. That can't be possible. There's got to be, because he lost his job and his regular viewers feel like they're not winning right now because their team lost, it can't be that they suck. It has to be that there's some giant, puppet master behind the scenes pulling the strings.
It's a self-reinforcing reality. There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid.
Right, like the idea that there's a giant media machine that coordinates amongst competing news organizations to unify a message to dictate to the American people what they should think versus competing organizations who are always chasing the same, chasing a scoop, and there's only, so much real information out there.
Only dumb people talk like that.
Well, and, they also dress funny too.
Now everybody in power talks like that.
Do they?
Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill.
Okay, now we get into the sort of gish gallop of bigotry. What you do is trigger in your audience at their outrage machine, and then attach the outrage, whatever one that is, to the other things you want them to be outraged about, and the more dough-headed ones, which of course are the entirety of his regular audience on his old show, and certainly anybody who would watch this and actually think it was worth their time, have it, they're spongy enough to go, oh, that's upsetting. Those other two things must be terrifying.
It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't
The trans women or women is about the treatment of people and the respect for their identity and who they are. Zelensky as Churchill is another person's descriptive of him in particular. And there's an argument to where he's in some cases better than Churchill because of some of the things Churchill has said and, previous to himself, to like kind of rehabbing himself in World War II. Wouldn't you agree? And then what was the other one? I forget what the first one was because it's all gibberish anyways. What was that again?
Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength.
Oh, right. Diversity is our strength. Right. And you can see why he would get upset about this. Just on its face, put all the obvious bigotry and whatever alignment he's trying to have with his audience aside to go, yuck, other people. And understand that this dude has been engaged in single-minded rhetorical work for the last, I guess, since Crossfire shut down, and shortens his interviews with people like Candace Owens and other people like that because he doesn't think they should be on his show at all, and has ultimately boiled down his show to just this. Just his monologue. That's it. You think there's a little bit of psychological projection about who he is into this?
Trans women are women.
Because and I know what some of you are thinking, but I incorporate my chat and I have guests sometimes.
Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions.
Well, I provided an explanation, and if you asked a question about it, I would explain to you why I thought those three statements actually have some worth. I mean, obviously, at Fox News, diversity is a real problem. I mean, because you might want people of different races or creeds or what have you, but they're all going to think the same. Most of us, when we talk about that, is about life experience giving certain people a different kind of wisdom because their experience might be different than ours, and therefore, when we're confronted with a problem or a challenge in front of us, that variant degrees of experience of it might give us a tactic or a solution we wouldn't think of on our own. Hence, diversity is our strength. Now, this is also a guy whose entire life, including the bow tie era, is based on hyperconformity. I mean, even this set behind him, even like the wood frame and the wood wall and everything beige, kind of, I guess, is what this is an example of what should be there. God knows what Tucker Carlson himself would actually put if he had an original thought where he sat down and really drawn like, this is weird, but I feel like there was a pattern that I saw when I was a kid, and if I could have this is a man with effectively endless money to recreate something, and he made like the downstairs of a ski lodge in Yale, or Vale rather, Yale, or Yale, both of them, at Vail, just recreated it. Just make it look like that, because people who watch my show will like that, and then I'll sit in front of the pool cues, and people will think I actually use them.
Sound familiar? Of course it does. That's the pap they're serving us day after day in steaming, lumpy portions.
But enough about Trump.
By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world.
Hi, Tucker. Fuck you. I mean, I understand the power of wishful thinking on your part. Oh, thanks so much. Yay.
Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Do they? Have you sent Jesse Waters down there to like do their voice back to them and ask them questions about yak herding?
It's obvious.
It's totally obvious. It's obvious. Your average yak herder knows that Russia blew up its own pipeline because it didn't want to have to release the gas back through the facility because it wasn't going to go into Germany.
Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl?
Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually some girl? I again, this will be I suppose this is a Dylan Mulvaney dig. Here's the bigger question. Am I supposed to believe this is a man? I mean, in the traditional sense that this guy thinks those roles should be played out, is this dude a man? Well, of course he is. You can tell. Is the inside of his downstairs rec room, his basement rec room that opens onto the yard, is wood paneled, like a sauna at Lindsey Graham's house. Let's just say, if I can think of somebody that has, and then a bunch of pool cues in the background. Yes, it's totally manly. It's not overcompensating at all.
Come on. That idea would never occur to him. You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that.
Yeah, this is we're 6 minutes into this. This started out about a dam being blown up as a tactic in an ongoing war, and now he is aligning this with this belief that people believe that trans women are women, should be treated as such out of respect for who they are as people, not because we have illusions that they're going to get ovarian cysts and that they should get a trip to an OB-GYN to get an operation they don't qualify for, or anything like some deluded idea of what he has about what people like that believe. But just because it's the same thing. It's all the same. That you have to be screamed at to show respect for another human being at the jump. And maybe that's the essence of it. Maybe this is the essence of us discovering what Tucker on Twitter is teaching us about the man, is that, first of all, his opinion of how other people have come to the opinions that they have in life seem to be based on, I guess, his own experience at home as a child that made him end up being a man who wore a bow tie to work every day forever to be the next William F. Buckley.
And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do. But mostly they just...
You are the media. You are on the media. You're still on the media. This is media. We're watching media.
ignore the stories that matter.
Do they? All right. Well, thank God Tucker's here. It's been 6 minutes in a 10-minute segment. Tell us all about it.
What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine?
Well, it's not quite hundreds, plural. It's 140, something like that. And it's obviously been spent kicking Russia's ass, or this would have been over in 2 weeks. You fucking tool.
No clue.
No clue. I have a clue. We've seen the HIMARS actually launch. We've actually seen that, like, for example, Ukrainian people aren't starving to death. That the refugees that actually went to Poland and stuff had supplies when they got there and were able to come back when the areas were safe. Obviously, the ones closer to the front line in Kharkiv or in the Kherson region obviously are still elsewhere, but they're getting support as well. And then, of course, the grain that's being grown in Ukraine that's necessary for lives in Africa, for example, that has been able to continue in spite of the attacks by Russia, in large part due to the American taxpayer protecting that as well, and protecting those shipping lanes and arranging for those shipped goods to get to where they're going. Also, we see the military stuff in action, the physical stuff, the satellite imagery. Obviously, a huge part of the money spent is in tactical support.
Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago?
Organize the riots? I don't know. How do you organize a riot? You'd have to ask Mark Meadows and Trump. I don't think that they organized protests. There were organized protests. Some riots broke out afterwards or in relation to them, but they weren't the organized part. Although I would say January 6th is a great example of an organized riot. It was intended to turn that way. So I would go, if you want to know how to put one of those together, I guess call Ginny Thomas.
No one's gotten to the bottom of that.
And if anybody's going to get to the bottom, it's Tucker Carlson. Welcome to Tucker on Twitter.
What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's
I think a couple planes hit the towers, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, I could be wrong after all these years. It's been so long.
still classified.
It's still classified. Is it? Maybe that's why they never play the footage every year.
How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on.
Well, all right. We're just gonna gish gallop through your favorite conspiracy theories. Epstein made his money partly by controlling money of I would say in large part big pedophiles that he helped facilitate what they wanted, and they were like, "Hey, man, you keep me in underage skirt, and I'll throw money to you forever." And then the other part was blackmail. I would say a big portion of that. It seems it's one of the reasons why he was. Like trial-wise, he and Ghislaine Maxwell were, going to be at odds if he had lived and gone to trial. Also, who was president when he died in jail? My goodness.
Not only are the media not
Also, JFK was shot in Dallas. He was assassinated. Yeah.
interested in any of this.
No, nobody's interested in it. I've never even seen. I wish they would do a movie about JFK or, well, what would you call it? I mean, the problem with, 9/11 is that nobody, except maybe, I don't know, old Daily Show hosts give a shit about the first responders that went there. And of course, nobody was even allowed to ask questions about why we were going to Iraq and Afghanistan around that. I would have, had I, thought of it at the time, but
They are actively hostile to anybody who is.
no, they're not. And we're not no one, Tucker, Booby, nobody is actively hostile because you're just asking questions. They're actively hostile to you because you're a bigoted, dog whistling fuck.
In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime.
How would you know you're not a journalist and you never have been?
Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft.
Okay, so we're just going straight to the X-Files. We're just awesome. We're going to Project Blue Book. I'm mistaken. I thought that this was his rec room that he had designed for him so he could do. He's clearly in a Ramada Inn someplace in Indiana for a MUFON meeting. So this is all going to boil down to we're supporting Zelensky, who's a ratty Jew, apparently. So I'm sure Soros will work into this as well somewhere. And nobody cares to even look at the JFK assassination, much less, do thought experiments on what happened or investigate it. And that's largely because aliens won't let us. Well, I'm sorry, Tucker. You've let everyone off the fucking hook. If aliens run shit and there's aliens outside, and the whole government is like, look, we've been talking to aliens. They're gonna kill us if we. Apparently, they've shown us the big laser, and and our Jewish space lasers they're no competition whatsoever. We can't even get the funding because Marjorie Taylor Greene is running interference, and we can't show her the UFO stuff because she hasn't got clearance because of her time at that gymnasium going. But we can't even tell Americans who killed JFK, or the aliens will punish us.
The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems.
Okay. Not the crashed ships. The bodies of the aliens. They've been studying the physical remains of alien pilots to make advanced weaponry. Now, I know I know he misspoke, but I think, quite frankly, he's just too dumb or doesn't give a shit to make the distinction. So we're doing that. We're dissecting aliens to make more powerful weapons. Here's an idea. Let's just entertain this bullshit for 1 second. Maybe we're doing this because we know reinforcements are coming. They're going to blame us for their dead comrades, and we need to find a weapon that will kill these things. Or he's just being a dipshit. That's also, yeah.
Okay.
That's
what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth.
Is it? It's clear he's telling the truth. I mean, it has to be. He has to be telling the truth. Because no former intel officer has ever come forward and said that there were, alien remains anywhere in the fucking hell. Clearly. My favorite part of this, I think, so far, is that you're being told how to think about Zelensky, even though you can watch the reports and you can see that Russia is getting its ass kicked. And you can see that it was the second biggest military in the world. You were told, if anything, you were lied about how strong the Russian military was. But even the people who thought that were like, God damn, I thought they were way better. They legitimately believed it. They weren't selling something they didn't believe. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. But you're a dough-headed fuck if you entertain these thoughts, even though you're like, well, I don't really have a thought about Zelensky, but Russia attacked. They're a much bigger country. These guys have been fighting their ass off. We've been giving support. Clearly, they're using the weapons we're sending, which are very expensive, and they're using a lot of them, and they're winning, or the Russians would have taken over. I don't even have to have an opinion about this fucking guy to recognize the tactical superiority of the way the Ukrainians are running things. That's easy. But you're a spongehead if you don't believe this one former intel officer who says we've been dissecting aliens. And by the way, excuse me, but my entire life, we've had former intel people talking about dissected alien bodies. Also, how the fuck, I'm almost amazed that in the face of evidence of aliens among us, this motherfucker is still interested in being racist to his fellow humans. Think about that for a second. Holy shit.
In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life.
Why does he look like someone just snuck this into his teleprompter? What am I reading? Am I reading this? Apparently. I mean, it's obviously, it's apparent. And not only is it obvious that extraterrestrial life is real, but they're delicious. and they cook up quicker than Earth meat.
Now we know.
Yeah, now we know. All right, done. All right, cool. All right, well, let's wrap it up. We'll see everybody on Monday. It's just all I need. Now we know. The entire media is controlled by a cabal of people who are trying to control your thoughts and make you incapable of drawing your own conclusions from the reality around you. Earth, of course, being flat, but they're all ganging up on lying to you that it's round. And you're supposed to buy this. But one dude, and this guy goes, man, you know, this guy said it, so now we know. Aliens. We've been chopping them up forever. We've been making, they were trying to kill us. We fought back. We won. You know, War of the Worlds was real, and it's done.
In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium.
And but in Twitter world, it's a side note in this dickhead's opening, rambling, shitty monologue passing for a show on a microblogging site.
But in our country, it doesn't.
By the way, what the? Show me the. All right. Show me the clips of Indian television, Chinese television, Russian television, television UK and Australia and the Middle East and everybody going like, a U.S. guy just said there's aliens and nobody's paying attention. Like everywhere else in the world, it's huge news, but you don't speak a foreign language because that's gross.
The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of.
Yeah, missed it. I got to say, it's on my list of shitty little sites. I mean, it's right after Flashpoint. I do have to check it out. Yeah.
The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it.
Uh-huh. Does the fact that it exists allow for the assumption that everybody, quote, has the story because if they Googled UFO, it would come up? Is that what you mean by had the story?
The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You know why? Because they're being controlled by a big alien. It's that's because they sell all those, you know, there are no UFOs ads in their paper, so they don't dare tell you the truth. But you're not going to buy that, are you? Double butt crack in the forehead.
On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup.
The usual lineup. I know. I can always count on it there. And by the way, the digital version of the front page is very different from the front page that you would have in a print newspaper. It's very distinct in that they can align stories and kind of categorize them almost in folders, and that's how they do them. In a big upper story, but there'll be like 3 chain stories. Bloomberg does the same fucking thing. All of them do that. Fox News does it on their website. That's just how this is. It's very different from the limited physical space that exists on a printed newspaper. But please continue to draw inferences from the fact that there are 5 stories instead of saying, here's the story, this was the last story we did on another related subject, and here's the 3 backup stories that we may reference in the other ones, and they're all in one little block this big.
There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities.
Fucking hell. New York Times, you're slipping. Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. Oh yeah? How about in space no one can hear you scream? How about that, huh? 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 You fucking, huh? First of all, if I may, I don't even know if I can. Let me tell you something, Tucker. We are in control of Earth's messaging. You need only listen to us to understand that we seeded ourselves in you by fucking gorillas when we got here and making humans. And ever since then, we've been babysitting you motherfuckers. And it's honestly, I'm a little tired of it. I'm just up. I've had it up to my 6 head.
Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional,
it's because the news won't tell you about aliens. That seems right. That makes sense. Yeah. This is his conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, because the New York Times and the Washington Post aren't running front page UFO dissection stories. We're a failed state. We are.
This is a big part of the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what's happening.
How was I supposed? You mean I watched seasons of the X-Files? Had I known it was a documentary, I wouldn't have been rooting for them to make out all this fucking time.
A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the
Are they the one that put you in the little wooden box?
rest of us don't know.
Well, you can't blame us for your ignorance.
We're allowed to yap all we want about racism.
Or yap in a racist way, even, it would seem.
But go ahead and talk about something that really matters.
Like alien stories? No, they are not letting us say the thing. That's honest to God. This dick. At one point I thought he was going for preppy Alex Jones. He's now going for preppy David Icke.
And see what happens. If you
Well, yeah, you know it's going to happen. Black helicopter time. Does that make you nervous? It should. There he is, Sam. Yeah, the guy in the backyard with his binoculars and the bubble wrap.
keep it up, they'll make you be quiet.
If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Really? Really? How did you finish this video then, dummy? If you keep it up, what, are you never going to cover this shit again? I hate this shit. This is so lame.
Trust us.
Trust us. Wait, trust us? Who the fuck is us? So you're an us all of a sudden?
That's how they maintain control. When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise.
Right, and you're going to tell us that RT's been kicked off the air in the United States, so we don't really know what's going on in Russia, even though it's available on the web and nobody even needs a VPN to look at it, unlike Russia and YouTube right now.
The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear.
Yes, well, and I mean, they could obviously hear the fapping, but if you had a good set of headphones, all they heard were your moans and the weird squishing noises. America's where land of milky tatas.
50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here.
Yes, none of us, we think the Russians are all in a big hurry to escape the country because millions of them just did.
We're the ones who live in ignorance now.
What? Please tell me he ends this by going, "You're welcome, America. We're the ones who are completely misinformed and full of shit." This is Tucker Carlson saying mission accomplished.
The US government has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents.
So-called.
So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed to know.
Well, not the classified stuff, dumb, because if we know, so does anybody else that would... Do you not... Please tell me you think the Chinese, the CCP and the Russians are on our side, and the Saudis as well, and Iran, and North Korea. And we only keep secrets, not from those people, but from the flyover states. We're trying to keep the people of Arkansas in the dark. They're doing most of the heavy lifting.
By definition, that is not a democracy.
No, we voted that we should have actual national security. I do vote for people who... I wouldn't vote for somebody who wants to dismantle our entire intelligence apparatus because our country would be eaten alive immediately and everyone here would be surreptitiously murdered on all fronts because we would... And not even for terroristic or religious reasons, just criminals would act on it.
Yet it's fine with the media.
Is it?
Secrecy is a powerful tool of control.
What's your PIN number? What honestly, why is that? Why on the wall behind you? Why are there pool cues and not your bank accounts? Why um why instead of wood, why aren't the walls papered with your tax returns? I mean, look, are you just keeping these secret just to control people, Tucker? How are people going to believe you unless you're completely upfront with them? They can check your balance, maybe even move some of your money around themselves.
Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
That's the program. That's
Is it? That's quite a program. It sounds like Pornhub search
how
results.
most of us now live here in the United States.
Is it? Don't ask how we got so rich. Here's some racism.
Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos.
Fuck. Okay, we've done aliens. Is this asshole going to start in on why shouldn't you be able to fuck a cousin?
It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it.
Are we? We are. Tell us how we feel. They want to tell you how you feel, but we will tell you how we want you to feel.
As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio.
Who the fuck is we? It's not Tucker and company on Twitter. It's just Tucker. Who the fuck is we? What's we? What kind of... This isn't a campaign, dumb fuck. You have a monologue on a microblogging site. Fuck you, we. Jesus Christ.
Under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers here.
Uh-huh. Yeah, ask Matt Taibbi about that.
That turns out to be false. We'll leave.
Uh-huh. Well, I think do a report on the Tesla Gigafactory and see how it goes. Shit, if I was you, fucking fly there. Take a tour of the place. Bring a translator from the States that you trust, an American, obviously white in your case, Tucker, who speaks Chinese, if you trust anybody who speaks a foreign language. Take them with you and have them ask people there if they're, in secret, and tell them you'll blur out their face if they're slave labor or not. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure the show will stay on. I'm sure they'll air info and make it your longest episode. Make it a series.
But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
Sorry, we back? You cut away for that one last second with your lonely... Okay, he's got his phone, and then he's doing his own teleprompter with his right hand. And we back real soon? Jesus Christ. I mean, I guess that's progress. What is Tucker doing his own form of Ebonics now?
If that turns out to be false, we'll leave.
And I love that he edits and then can't speak with the edit that they kept.
But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
And this is me fly fishing in the middle of an AI painting.
Why do people say the news is full of lies?
They really spent top dollar on this setup. That is I just don't want you guys to think at all that the wood that you're seeing there is a stock image. No. Spared no expense. They built that by hand, took a picture of it, and then set it on fire like real men. And they went, "Oh!" like that. Fuck kind of title is that? It's like an NBC ripoff. That's it. Text Tucker to 44. What? What is this? Is this going to be his run for president? Please tell me he's running for president. Oh my God. If anything's going to capsize the Republican side of the aisle, it's Tucker running for president. Oh, so good. Yeah, no fucking way. But whatever. Anyway, so that was quite an adventure, wouldn't you say? And if I may, let me jump back in because the chat's been there and you guys have been hanging on throughout this whole thing. The freshest wood. That's Tucker's xylophone. Yeah, just send money. Oh, it's going to be half gold ads before you know it. Oh God, just think about that. That's your first episode. Look, when I started this show, as many of you know, I didn't know it was going to become a regular thing, and I didn't even develop a schedule for a couple of fucking months. I was just doing it because people were freaking out during COVID, and I just wanted to cheer some people up. This asshole knew that he's like, all right, I've been kicked off of Fox. I'm going to, move over here. Twitter, they're going to set up a thing for me at Twitter. This is it. So we got to knock this one out of the park. This has got to be we got to get this right. We got to really show them that they're seeing something special here instead of just some dickhead jabbering weird talking points apropos of nothing into a camera for 10 minutes and calling it a fucking show. Good Lord, that was ass. I'm still cheering people. I'm trying, John. Let's go with the UFOs. I agree. I mean, I love the conversation about UFOs. Do not get me wrong. But it belongs in its own category of conversation. You don't just throw that in the middle. It's like in the middle of a relationship argument. You're like, fucking, I don't know who's doing the dishes, but let's just divide up, because it's not going to matter anyways. They're fucking aliens on the planet. Like, all right, you can't. You can't just throw that. We seem to have lost our trolls. Oh, that's sad. Tucker turned into Alex Jones again. I think he's more David Icke. Like he's got like a David Icke segment. He's catfishing. Yeah. Oh my God, that was terrible. Wonderfully terrible. Anyways, you're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe. I go through these clips, I didn't cut him out of context. I didn't take the little snippet about this alien bullshit and go, well, in the middle of this thing, he just goes off on this stuff. No, I show you the whole thing. We watched that whole thing together. We made it through it. Oy.